If you can do this, this is amazing. It's in 90 seconds and 60 seconds. And this came a great question from the public, as you know. And I'll read this twice if you need me to, okay? How do you plan on addressing the budget deficit in Connecticut while keeping in mind the tax burden of working families? Please be specific.
All right. Well, as I said, it's in a plan. It's a multi-pronged approach. There are no overnight solutions and no magic wands. But let me say this first. In my economic plan, I do say that we can't tax our way out of our current economic climate, which I've called a crisis. So we have to look at, first, our current state government operations, just like I did when I was commissioner of the Department of Veterans Affairs, finding ways to operate even though our budget went down each year, even though our resources were reduced each year, by bringing my military experience, my corporate experience, lean initiatives to get things done. Not to lay off state employees, but to get more done with what we have. We've got to do that agency by agency by agency, finding ways to find those lean ways to do it. We've got to also look at how state government operates with our cities and towns all across the state and recognize that municipal aid has gone down and they continue to go down. And so incentivizing our towns and cities to find ways to scale and merge existing activities that they have. But we have to continue to invest in our state. We have to grow our economy, grow our tax base by investing in infrastructure, which we're currently leaving thousands of jobs on the table because we can't get projects out the street and on the street so that we have skilled worker jobs, thousands of jobs that we need. Jobs like Local 478 operating engineers, where I visited their apprenticeship program. We have to invest in businesses, like I said before. We have to incentivize students to get the degrees they need to get the manufacturing jobs that already exist with loan forgiveness, as I talk about in my plan. So much more to talk about. You can't do it in 90 minutes, but thank you very much.
Pretty good job. You'll probably hear others, this is true at least when I took over Bridgeport when it was bankrupt. The budget was somewhere in the $330 million range. It had a projected 5-year accumulated deficit of over $200, maybe $250 million. And even at that time, we didn't look to tax or cut our way out of it. It had to be a combination of a lot of things. Alternate source of revenue when you can find them. In this case, if we end up moving towards, and I support legalization under certain circumstances of marijuana as another source of revenue like Colorado's doing. With respect to investing in our transportation, the transportation fund, but also as well the tolls, and there's other things that we can do. I also think we need to look at some of the fixed costs and be creative and work in partnership with others to make a difference on those to save money. In Bridgeport, we took our pensions, which were considered to be a liability of X amount of dollars, and by a simple authorization by the state of Connecticut, saved some $60 million over 20 years. And that item alone, which was looked at as a fixed cost, without jeopardizing the pension benefits for the retirees, but one item taken away from the budget to make it more affordable for the other services that we want to provide. Again, not enough time, a lot more to talk about. Thanks.
3 pathways. Sorry, step on your applause. Can I start now? 3 pathways. Getting our arms around spending, changing our tax structure, reinventing that, and long-term growth. So spending, we did it in West Hartford, I told you about it. At Consumer Protection, we were down 25% of our people, given more to do. We focused on what was necessary, protecting public health and safety, preventing economic harm to consumers and businesses, stop doing things that weren't necessary. We used process improvement, we used technology. We did more with less and we did it better. Pension, that'll get you part of the way. Pension's a big thing. We started making our pension payments, like I did in West Hartford when we had to, so we wouldn't go under. But we need to take $18 billion of hard assets that the state has and redeploy some of those to help with the long-term pension benefit. Finally, tax structure. We need to reinvent our tax structure so that it grows the economy, so that it provides incentives for people, for businesses, for families to come to Connecticut and to stay in Connecticut. I have a lot of ideas on that.
Of course, the real answer is growth. It's amazing that we have fewer people working in Connecticut today than we did a generation ago. We don't need more taxes, we need more taxpayers. But unfortunately, it's circular. We're not going to get this economy growing again and give business people confidence to invest until we fix our budget. So we have a budget that doesn't borrow from the future, but invests in the future. And that's going to be multi-pronged. It's going to require new revenues, making sure our revenue streams fit for the 21st century, find a way that our digital economy that now contributes to the cost of government, so we can slowly bring down the property tax or over-reliance on the property tax. That's a tax that most burdens working families and kills our cities and towns.
Everywhere you go in this state, you say Hartford, and people groan. They shouldn't, but they do. I was talking to a Brookfield police officer earlier in the day. He said, I'm going to retire in a couple of months, and I'm out of here. Why? It costs too much. We're Democrats. If we don't pay attention to that, we will lose in November. I'm not going to raise taxes. But what we are going to do is look at things like the Department of Transportation, who wants to spend $1 billion in Norwalk for a railroad bridge that should cost less than half of that. It costs twice as much to build a bridge and twice as long to build a bridge in Connecticut than it does in Massachusetts. It's just as hot, it's just as cold, and the trucks are just as heavy. We spend millions of dollars on consultants that we're going to stop because we have state workers that know how to do this. We don't need consultants. Just take that one department across the entire state government. That's how we're going to do this.
I agree that at the end of the day, it's about growth, and we've talked a little bit about how you get there, but I want to talk about two specific things. For local governments, as the pressure mounts, the pressure all is felt at the local level on property tax. As part of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, I was part of a task force that proposed revenue diversification. Let local governments get some other sources of revenue, whether it's hotel tax, whether it's optional, food and dining tax. Let that decision be made at the local or regional level, but give local government some choice so that it's not all falling on property taxpayers. Another thing, this is a very specific thing, but I think it's important. One of our biggest liabilities right now is our pension funds, and we have to fund them. The biggest challenge of our pension funds is our teachers' retirement system, which wasn't funded for years. If you remember that a long time ago, we were promised that the Connecticut lottery money would go to education. We should be selling that revenue stream, depositing into the teachers' retirement fund to shore that up so that we can restructure the funding schedule and get a little bit of relief in the years ahead.
So I think the question was, how do we deal with the budget deficit? So first thing, do more with less. When I was Secretary of the State, when I started out, we had 110 employees. When I left, 12 years later, we had 70, but we did more with less through cross-training people, through using technology, being more efficient. We have to do that across state agencies. We have to grow our way out of this, and I've talked a little bit about how to do that. I also have some very specific suggestions about where we can get more revenue. Here's a good one, $520 million a year. Close the hedge fund loophole that allows private equity and hedge fund investors to pay only 15% when corporations are paying 20%. That doesn't make sense. Also legalize marijuana, because that would bring another $50 million a year in revenue, and all the other states around us are doing that. Thank you.
Next question, Mr. Gown.